Hello.
Hi.
Hi. You're Julia.
I did intend on looking better than this, but
No problem at all.
Oh, shit, sorry. Hi,
It's totally
welcome,
fine. It's totally
welcome.
fine.
Do you want to wash hands or use
No, I'm good.
hand
Can we just put this
sanitizer?
down?
Yeah, by all means.
Wicked.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
I was on the phone with a girlfriend the other day and, talking about pivoting careers. And I said, maybe like in the future I'll be like a speaker or a writer. And she's like, Jules, I've never seen you more alive than when you're on a shoot directing. And I cried. That's a really lovely compliment. I think photography has always been in my blood. Like my dad's a shutterbug. Both uncles are huge shutterbugs. And I remember like doing little sets with like teddy bears and stuff in gardens when I was little, and those old like 24 frame disposable cameras. I honestly can say I can't imagine my life without it. And we are fortunate enough to be able to monetize that passion and get to do it with amazing people and go to amazing places and just be able to share the experience of those amazing people and amazing places through our work. And yeah, I think it's a miracle.
Jules or Julia? What do you prefer?
Julia. Yeah, let's do Julia.
What a weird moment to have to record a podcast. Like, holy shit.
It has been a week, Fran.
You sent me the words that I looked on the on the screen, and I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't mean you don't have to force the conversation into that. We can jump right into the photograph that you sent. You sent 4 photographs. We can go through there and see where we land.
Let's do that. Yeah,
sure.
Let's do that.
Perfect.
So this is a self-portrait that I did at the start of 2020. And when I say start, I mean like when there was a mystery pneumonia coming out of Wuhan. And I'm like, this is definitely not going to impact the rest of my life. So I wanted to do something that actually showed what I do. So obviously it's a trademark of mine to have those, selfies like reflected in the mirror. But because I am a studio photographer and I use strobes, I wanted to try and do it in a way that actually shows how light interacts with subjects, but has me as the subject. So this is in my old studio, which was in my apartment in Shupai Terrace. And Pantone release colours every year, the colour of the year, and it was that really beautiful blue.
Mm.
And I just wanted to be, weren't we all full of vim and vigour at the start of 2020?
Right.
It was
so naive.
Oh my God, babes in the woods. And after the turmoil of 2019 in Hong Kong, I was just so hopeful. And I was in the corporate world for many years. And it was like Vision 2020, all of that like rah-rah, inspirational / motivational, big quotation mark stuff. So I really love this photo. And, I'm just like being all ridiculous in my high-heeled docs and my leather pants. But I really love how the lights look.
So you're standing, it's your whole body. You're sort of leaning on, it could be, I guess it's like a case.
It's a pelican. It's that pelican over there.
No free publicity for Pelican.
No.
They're the worst sponsors. They never pay.
Is that true?
They have yet to ever send me a check.
Boo.
They're not actually a sponsor. That's fine. So you're sort of your arms there. Your pose is like one leg is kind of crossed. You're standing. You've got a shutter release in your hand, like a trigger, and you've got the strobes and the diffuser lights sort of behind you. The lighting is beautiful. You can see that the background is held up on the stands. That this is a studio photo, and you're just looking right to the camera. The lighting's very beautiful. The blue is a blue that I am very drawn to. It's very dark, rich, sort of almost navy. And there's this one of the gold reflectors. So as a photograph, it's, I wouldn't necessarily think, this is high experimental art, but it is a very accomplished. You obviously know what you're doing in the studio.
We try. We better.
So what's the history of you in photography? Like what? So you said you've always had the cameras, but when did you buy all this gear? Like we're surrounded by beautiful lights and all this kit, and you're in your own studio.
I'm in my own studio.
Sell it.
It's I'd always been like a passionate amateur, and I moved to Sydney out of country Victoria when I was about 23, and just had like this little Fuji like point and shoot. It was a pretty little point and shoot. It looked a lot fancier than it was. And I was just always the one who would have a camera. And I'm showing my age, but this is like before camera phones. And I always took photos. I took photos of my friends. I took photos of my walks, and was working in the corporate world in sort of financial services and private equity. And just, you ever had a moment in your life where you're just like, that Sesame Street, one of these things just doesn't belong here. The rest of these things are kind of the same. Yeah.
You must have had that realization pretty young.
I was pretty young.
You look really young right now. So.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my dermatologist.
Also a person with yet to baby.
And I went back to school. So I went back to study photography at night at the Australian Centre of Photography in Sydney. Wow. And just sort of built on course. And they were wonderful. Absolutely brilliant. And, I thought a little bit of knowledge can go a long way. And I went, that's it. I'm going to quit my job and it's going to be awesome. And I found out I was expecting. I was pregnant with my daughter, Alexandra, who's turning 9 next month. So it was the biggest blessing, but also it's probably not a great time to quit your job. So Alex was born in April. And I was pretty confident I wasn't going to go back to that role that I was on maternity leave from. And I just, started being a second shooter with some other photographers and learning and continued doing courses. Yeah, and I was doing some family portraiture and stuff. I really wanted to be a photojournalist. So that was always my passion. And that was sort of the end game, if you will. And then Alex and my husband at the time, we moved to the Philippines in 2013. And the Philippines is not a shining light when it comes to how they treat journalists in general, much less 20-something-year-old female journalists. I was doing work. I've always been really passionate about using photography as a tool to tell stories. And as I said before, just to be able to show people what I've seen and use that as a really powerful way to tell a story or send a message and show people in the comfort of their living rooms what life can be like 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 kilometres away. Wow. So I was working there and I did some work with private clients and NGOs. I was doing a lot of work in the slums. And if you've been to a Manila or a Quezon City slum, that is, to this day, some of the most gut-wrenching poverty I've ever seen. And I think as photographers as well, there is a level of respect that you need to give to your subjects. And a few years ago there was a lot of poverty porn, like the Bang Bang Club with that child being stalked by a vulture. I think it won a Pulitzer actually. I really wanted to do that in a way where I was still, respecting the humanity of what I was seeing, and just being very careful to balance that. Motorbike. Balance that in a way that was respectful, but still, not sugarcoating it. Mm. And in 2016, came to Hong Kong, and the world just opened up. I mean, Hong Kong for a photographer, I'm sure you know, it's just it's a piece of art in itself. And the people you meet and work with, and it just sort of it grew and grew. And I split the businesses in 2017 and started Jules Baby, because I just, people go, but what do you really love taking photos of? I'm like, I love it all. Mm-hmm. I'll take a photo of somebody preparing a meal, or I'll take a photo of, Art Basel. Mm-hmm. I still love it.
I'd like to interrupt for a second and just geek out. Okay, so you are in your studio. We're in your studio. The concrete, the floor is concrete. It's in a very industrial building. We're on the 13th floor.
Correct.
So it's nice. There's nice natural light coming in through the windows. There's a stand-up desk with her computer.
I love my stand-up desk so much. It is such a game changer around.
Okay, and then on the wall are like cupboards, and on top of them are, I guess, various props that you'd probably use for a photo shoot.
Yep.
You've got your little espresso machine on the side, not to diminish the espresso machine for being small. You got this really nice sofa and table. You got the case for your camera. What camera is sort of tossed on the seat over there?
What camera is nonchalantly treated with disregard? Yeah. That would be. I think there's like 2 or 3 there.
Okay, there you go.
Humble brag. You're just one of my units. My workhorse now is a Nikon D4S.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. It's really goddamn heavy, but it's gorgeous. Mm-hmm. My backup is a D800E that I've had for years.
Right.
I've got my second D700. My first one was stolen in a market in Manila, nice. 2 weeks in. Yeah, great. With all my photos of leaving Australia, shit. We dump a lot of memory cards now.
No.
Kids, dump your memory cards.
Wow.
Back up, back up, back up.
Okay, so above that seat, there are 3 sort of shelves with these toys or little models. I see Animal from Cephalopagus or whatever from Puppet Show. Fine. Moving over, there's Jules Baby, a sort of little kind of promotional poster that shows it. On the same sort of seat that the poster's propped up on, it are 2 sort of fixed lenses.
Yeah, I'm almost exclusively fixie unless I'm doing a big event.
Ah, well, that stands apart. That's not
really.
Well, a little bit. The fact that you say I'm almost exclusively a fixed focus. Yeah, I mean, they look like old lenses.
Yep, that's a 35 and a 50. I've got an 85 portrait, 105 macro. My one zoom that I really love is a 16 to 35. Uh-huh. So it's wide, but it's not fisheye.
Right.
Wide.
Yeah.
And that's just a beautiful piece.
Yeah. And then we've got an umbrella, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 diffusers, light banks, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And then we have a whole bunch of rolls for the background. I mean, this is a photographer's space. The vibe is so great. Are all of your shots, not all, but would you say, what percentage of shots do you do here in this space?
I think it would swing 75-25.
Okay.
I think, a lot of portrait photographers, the more you work, especially when you work with strobes and constant lights, you just become a little bit type A. And, clients will go well, do you want to come to my house or should I come to the studio? And they're like, honestly, come to the studio. I'm not going to have to move your stuff. I'm not going to take your artwork off the walls. I'm not going to yell at you for not hiding your remotes or your iPod chargers. So I think what I wanted this space to be is not only will I get a really beautiful result, but I wanted to have something where I say families, but it's really for mothers, for mothers and women who are, have created life or are creating life in my maternity work, to just feel comfortable and eat delicious pastries and have really good quality teas. And, that for me, the shoot isn't just a means to an end. I don't want to be a photo booth, smile, click, on your way. I want it to be experiential and celebratory. And then at the end, you get some beautiful personalized artwork.
Nice. So let's talk about what it's like to be a photographer in Hong Kong. In that it is, the outside is definitely a massive playground, right? It is so visual and it's so dynamic and moving and all this stuff. It can be overwhelming and it has the full range from, the natural landscape, jungles and
completely. So that's for those of you listening at home. From my balcony, you sort of look out to Aberdeen Marina, but this is not a visual medium because I'm literally in my workout gear, and I get to walk to the studio every morning. It's 5.5K, and just the landscape of Hong Kong, as well on the south side, is just beautiful.
So dramatic. Nice hills, water. You can like or dislike the industrial.
I love a bit of grit.
It's almost like a kind of a surrealist scene.
Yeah.
Where you're just like the grids and the lines and everything are so tall and they kind of clash with each other, and you'll have one sort of scheme on this side which is like pink and pastel and white, and then you've got this sort of...
It's really jarring.
Yeah.
It's really jarring. And you can tell, like, the gentrification that came through here in the past few years. So you do have, like, really raw concrete, rust stains on the side compared to these, like, brand new, like, serviced offices. Yeah, it's that sort of juxtaposition that I love about Hong Kong. Like, it's perfectly imperfect.
Or imperfectly perfect.
Better.
I have no idea.
I'm going to defer to you.
So this image that you sent, which is a self-portrait. Now, I did notice that you have a lot of self-portraits where you're just holding up the camera into a mirror and it's photographing you. And at this time, here you can see your face, but you've got many series where the camera's hiding your face. Is that possible? Or am I imagining that?
No, I think I just started doing that in the Philippines. You know, I remember back in the day when Facebook was just a fun way to catch up with people and not a way to start an insurrection. Yeah, I just really loved it as a way to, you know, have a photo that I have taken of myself and to be able to control it. And once again, because I learnt photography on cameras, my iPhone photography is appalling. It is, I walk into things, I fall over things, like the horizon's like at 30 degrees, like it's shockingly bad. And people go like, Jules, isn't this your job? I'm like, not on an iPhone. I use actual cameras. Very important.
So good.
I know.
Good.
It's so
I love
funny.
it. As it turns out, so the one that popped up is, okay, so the photograph is, you're obviously using really nice lenses, really good cameras, all this stuff. So everything is just deliciously colorful and rich and saturated and dynamic and all those words. It looks like, so there's a child sitting at a tractor. That is
my child.
Your child.
That is my child. That is Alex. And Alex actually took that last photo.
Oh.
Yeah. So I set it up, and that was taken on my A9, which is my play camera, my personal camera. I found because I shoot so much, when I was taking out a Nikon to like an event or a friend's birthday, I'm like, I feel like I'm at work.
Right.
So I shouted myself an A9 a few years ago, and that's my hobby. That's my toy. Yeah, and it's a beautiful camera. And because it's so much lighter, Alex can use it.
Sure. So she's seated at a tractor.
A tractor,
which is slightly, it's red. The colors are red, black, gray. The tractor itself is painted a sort of nice, rich, sort of tomato red. She's wearing a nice red and white striped t-shirt. Can't see her face, but her hands are on the wheel of the tractor. The grasses are relatively high, very nice, very clean. There are barrels in the background, which it could be at a winery.
It is at a winery. It's at a friend's winery in Victoria.
Ah, nice. She's a bit young to drink, don't you think?
And drive, apparently.
Yeah, that's true,
but maybe with the two combined, that could be the key.
It's fine. Yeah, Australia.
She's Australian. She's gonna be fine.
It's fine. Okay, so they have a winery.
So this was taken in January of 2020, which is the last time we got to go anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's called Banks Road Vineyard. What up, Avenel and Will? Go check it out. They do beautiful wines. And we were there at a family lunch. My former husband's family, we all got together and went down there, and it was just, you know, when you get those really special days, like the weather was beautiful. They've got these beautiful golden retriever dogs, and we're sort of sitting in the sun and walking through these amazing barrels. Like, I guess my aesthetic is I quite like a bit of like industrial grit. I like seeing how things are made. And I just really loved this photo of Alex, because I'm from a town of 300 people. So
Right.
that is more reminiscent of my childhood.
So when you grew up, small town, what was at that town? Like, were there farms?
Yeah, it's a farming community.
Okay.
It's like 10 kilometers out of a quote-unquote regional city. I shouldn't say that. Sorry. It is a regional city. That was my hubris coming out. I'm sorry. Called Traralgon, and I went to school there. But my parents are still in the home that I came home from hospital when I was born.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's so lovely to go back. And I always wish there was a way to not just photograph scenes, but to photograph how it smells. You know, you wake up on a summer morning and you can smell like the eucalyptus oil in the air.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And, you know, just the smell of like freshly cut grass.
Yeah.
And hay, and Mum grows this amazing rose garden.
Wow. When you look at phones and technology is improving so much, right? But then one of the things about having these like higher end cameras is that the dynamic range, whatever you want to call it, like the color, the vividness of the color, if the exposure is right and everything, it's like it's hyper visual seeing, right?
Yeah.
We don't really see it in this way.
It's too crisp. It's too precise.
But on the other hand, I keep using the word delicious, but it's just like it's like this thing where you're just like you could lose yourself just in the. One of the themes of the podcast is every moment is a gift, and if life really is a gift, how do we make every second count? And sometimes,
Amen, brother.
Yeah, and so for me, sometimes looking at things like this that are so perfect, it's like the scene of her just holding, who knows what she's thinking about. Like it's like visually perfection, whatever. It's it's just for some reason, for me at least, it totally. It reduces me to mush, but so you say it anchored your childhood.
Yeah.
The fact that you're back in Australia, it's your daughter. Did you know it was going to be the last time you're going to be traveling in a while back then?
I had a feeling. So I think it was like the 23rd or 24th of January, and you're at Hong Kong International Airport having, you know, like a drink in the lounge, and it was CNN, and the ticker's like running past, and it's like mystery Wuhan flu or cold or what have you, and I'm like, this doesn't look great. So Hong Kong Airport obviously had
it's okay, we're in an industrial building.
So Hong Kong Airport still had all of the barriers up from the 2019 protests. So those massive like water-filled barriers, and then of course everybody's in masks, and like you're always cautious about when you speak about something that happened before a major event and go like, oh, you could feel it in the air. Right. But it was weird. Like people were in masks. It was like, I think the Friday of Chinese New Year. And I ran into a good friend of mine, Norbaya, and she was flying to New York to meet her new baby niece.
Okay.
And we're looking at each other going like, Jesus Christ, this does not feel good. And then we got to Australia and, you know, the schools shut down and... you know, people were like buying masks and hand sanitizer and the toilet paper rush of early 2020. And people look at each other going like, this does not look good. Yeah, and at that time, it was a China-Hong Kong problem.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you don't want a pandemic like until you live in it, right? We made the decision to stay in Australia for a little bit longer. And Andrew, my ex-husband, and his family wanted to go to the Australian Open. I'm like, yeah, sure, like go for it. Like it's pearls before swine with me. Like I'm not going to sit in the sun and pay $4 for a bottle of water. And then, you know, I had work and I really wanted to come home being Hong Kong. And we had friends who stayed on in Australia. And then there was all the cruise ships that started coming into Sydney. Right. And then, you know, Milan was an epicenter, and then New York was an epicenter. So we just thought like, yeah, it's time to hunker down.
Sure.
And, you know, Hong Kong has been reasonably normal, quote unquote. Like, we've never had a proper lockdown.
But Hong Kong, of all the places in the world, it seems that, I mean, New Zealand, yeah, but I think Hong Kong has probably been one of the best places to be.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So you're saying she made this photograph or you made the photograph?
I took the photo.
Okay. So can you use this as a kind of a prompt for was it morning? Was it like, what were you thinking? Like, why was that an impulse to say, oh, wait a second, this is beautiful. I want to...
I wish I'd put more thought into it now.
Why?
I know. It's like when you take a photo, because I shoot so much, and I'm definitely overshoot, which is great fun when you come to editing. You're like, oh, I'm so glad I took 350 frames in that 2-hour session.
Oh,
good for
sure.
me. I think when you, the premise of the podcast was to send you images, and, when you've got so many images,
right, and
what speaks to you. And I was sort of looking through that gallery of those images that I took during that time. And I really loved, I love the composition. Like, sure. I love that sort of corrugated iron at the top.
Yeah.
And, she's got, when I lived in the Philippines, people would assume that I was her yaya because she was like blonde, blue-eyed.
Right.
I don't believe I am Asian, but a 23andMe would probably answer that question. And I'm small, like I'm only short, and I just always loved just seeing her like blonde hair in the wind. Mm-hmm. And it's just very it's very innocent, it's very childlike. And
so one of the things that's interesting to me is that when somebody, so the people on the podcast, some are practicing photographers, some are painters, some are performance artists. But everybody's using photography differently, and it's more about, how are you using this as a mode to express yourself? And it's one of those things that despite yourself, you're on vacation, you have this moment with your daughter, so much of it could be placed for a magazine shoot. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, like, even the way her hair is, the way it's kind of, can't really see her face and everything, but it's like a spectacularly beautiful photo.
Thank you very much.
You're very my compliments to the photographer, whoever she is.
Thank you. Really, I've heard she's a bit of a bitch. I wouldn't worry about
it. Next photo, then. Fine, on that perfect tone.
Cool. So
your segue was.
I do listen to a lot of podcasts. It's all via osmosis, right?
Nice.
In 2019, I started working with a career coach, and she's done so much for me. Her name is Janine Manning. And have you worked with a career coach or any sort of life?
I kind of do that as my real job. Yeah.
Okay, so you've seen people sit there and have that existential moment of like, oh Christ, what am I doing with my life? Yeah. So I was with Janine, and I thought when I was younger, I'm like, I'm just going to be like a really awesome housewife, and I'm going to take care of my kid and do dinosaur pancakes. And I had a kid and went, oh, I was very wrong. This is not for me at all. So I was working with Janine, and I always wanted to do sort of a series of portraits with me. I love fashion. I love more alternative fashion as well. I can be I describe my style as sort of a goth Bootsy Collins. Like, I'll wear some pretty extravagant stuff. And I sort of wanted to put that into some of the beautiful, like, not abandoned, but less well-loved parts of Hong Kong.
Okay.
And I used to run past this door all the time, and it's the door to this amazing, I don't think it's abandoned, but it's definitely not being resided in.
Right.
It's this big old mansion on Kennedy Road between Kennedy and Bowen. And I always wanted to sort of put myself in the photograph, but I didn't know how. So I was speaking with Janine, existential crisis. That's me. Yeah, that's
you.
me.
Okay, so the image, I have to interrupt because, shot off the tripod?
Yes.
Okay, so what it is let's say 90% of the image is not you.
Correct.
So you have a bit of the ground, which is a kind of cracked concrete. You're wearing a really eye-catching light blue, could be a toga, could be a dress.
It's Zimmerman. I have many of them.
Okay.
Sadly, they don't sponsor me either. It's very unfortunate.
We'll work on that. Behind you is this old sort of garage door that's this light bluish color that's kind of old and faded. And I'd say 80% of the image is this very dark tree roots, trees, dark green, like practically black. So it's, again, you understand light. You work with light. You understand lighting and all this stuff. So everything about this photo is crafted. Why is this connected to Janine's work?
Once you work with a coach and you sort of figure out some of your, do a bit of a SWOT analysis on yourself and your character. And I just realized I was just so wrapped up in what people thought of me and whether I was, good enough or smart enough or pretty enough or young enough or thin enough, which is stuff that women go through all the time. And photography makes that really clear.
Right.
It's, being a professional photographer is hard enough, but when it's a photograph of yourself as well, it just compounds.
Right.
So I'd been working with Janine and told her and showed her some of my work, and she said, it's beautiful and it's powerful. And I just wanted to do something that was for me because we work with so many other people and we give our creativity and our ideas and our heart to other people. I just wanted to do something for me. So this was taken, I think, in May of last year.
Okay.
And I just wanted to work with the florals because Hong Kong does have so many beautiful flowers, and in the big Chinese holidays, we have the massive flower markets, and I wanted to bring that into the story as well. But I look at that photo now and look at my muscle tone. So gyms have been shut for a long time here in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And if you've ever been out of a gym for 2 months and then try and go back to one, it hurts.
Yeah.
So I like this photo much more now. But I also wanted to, once Janine told me and she said, I think this is really powerful to show other women, especially with my Jules baby work, go like what I was feeling like, I'm too fat, I'm too puffy, too thin, not toned enough, just had a baby, expecting a baby. And I'm like, it's all bullshit. Just throw it out. You'll never be as young as you are again today. And it's not just about you. The work that I do with Jules baby, it's really lovely to have a photo of you with the baby, but you're not the audience. Your baby is the audience.
Right.
Or the people who love you. Like when you take a portrait of somebody and they crack up and, they have this huge foghorn laugh. That's the shot. But nobody likes themselves looking like that because your face is all contorted and you're shriveling your nose up. But that's heart and that's authenticity. And what I wanted to do through my work is encourage and empower women to go, there's never a perfect time to get a photograph. There's never the perfect time to book a shoot. You go all right, my hair's done, had my waxing appointment, got new shoes, let's do it. And then you might wake up in the morning with a thumping headache or a giant pimple on the end of your nose, right? There's always something. So it is very much about embracing that moment and dealing with the imperfections. Oh, and another one of my slogans is God made Photoshop. Skin can be fixed.
Sure.
A waistline can be tastefully nipped in. I really have an issue with some of those Facetune apps. I think that shit is terribly dangerous.
Right.
Really insidious. But no woman on the planet likes the tops of her arms.
Right.
I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did this as a little love letter to Hong Kong and to women, and just to have fun again.
Sure. Okay. Was that a fun photo shoot?
I like the result more than I liked doing it.
Okay.
So Kennedy Road's pretty busy, and obviously there's that massive construction site between Queens Road East and Kennedy Road. So it's Hopewell 2. Yeah. Super busy, and I've got 1.5 kilos of flowers on my head in an evening gown.
I forgot to point out the arrangement on the top.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm extroverted, but I'm not that extroverted.
So here's what's interesting. The thing is that your selection of sending me photographs is that you curated a mini gallery that you sent to me. What you're doing now is you're kind of thinking about yourself when you curated this. We're talking about when you made the photographs.
Yeah.
But you gathered this set of 4. And it's also interesting to know, why these 4? What connections do we make to these 4? So, for example, of all the photographs you have.
I know. And that's the hard part.
Okay. So why did your brain go there?
I'd always loved it. It's one that had been in my head for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever really wanted to plan a shoot and you've just got to wait for when you're not working or it's not raining, or you can actually have the time to get there, do it properly. And also because it was in like one of those, blips in when COVID was less bad.
Right.
And I got to do it. It was just a long time coming for me.
This is one of those photographs that stands apart. It's a fourth photo. I think the sequence is almost random, but it happens to be a photograph not of you. Mm-hmm. So it's the lighting is bonkers. So
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah. So it almost looks like one of those HDR types images where the light is just perfect across the board, across the whole frame. There's a guy on a bicycle where they have with a plastic basket in the front. The bicycle looks like it's from 1950s.
Isn't it great? Yeah.
He's wearing a mask. You can see his nose.
I was going to say, he's wearing a mask incorrectly, but he's...
Yeah, it's okay. He's wearing it like a jockstrap.
He's making an effort. Yeah.
So he's going through an area of, I'm assuming, Shangwan or whatever. There's market, so there's looks, I think, like oranges, an orange stall on the left.
Yeah, it's Shamshuipo.
Shamshuipo, okay. So what around this image?
Last year, off the back of doing that first portrait that we spoke about, I had an idea to start a personal project called 20 Women of 2020. So after working with Janine and having that sort of existential crisis, and I was working my tail off with private clients and sort of building that business. And I just want to do something that is not commissioned, is not dictated by, a client's desires, but just for me. So we spoke about, I've always been really passionate about storytelling through NGOs, and 20 Women of 2020 was meant to be a message of hope told through the eyes of women in Hong Kong who are experts in their field, entrepreneurs, artists, people doing something that, is amazing, but also very much woman-centric and woman-focused. And this was taken on a day that I had met with one of my 20 women. Her name is Lindsey Barty. And Lindsey Barty is an amazing journalist and professional rugby player because, it's Hong Kong. Everybody's like, oh, I'm an actor / I run like a bungee company. Or, everybody's got these really awesome dovetails careers. And I just met Lindsey. I think it was the first or second time I'd met her. And she agreed to be on the podcast. Agreed to be part of the series. And I was on my own and walking around, this market, and I've always been really inspired. Inspired is kind. I'm really jealous of the work. Two different words. Yeah, I know. Okay. Of the work of Fan Ho, who did those beautiful black and whites of Hong Kong. And, Hong Kong light like this is just, it's poetry. Right. It's so beautiful. And I was just, I'd taken a day off to go do something for me. And, you're not making meals for anybody. You're not answering questions from a little version of yourself. So many questions. And I just had this moment in this market, and I was watching the light coming through, and I just got to have that, that perfect frame, and I just love it. I'm really proud of that image.
Yeah, it's a podcast, which is audio, about photographs.
I was going to say it's an interesting medium.
I may be an idiot. I may be a complete idiot, but people can go to the different places to see the images. With photography being a commodity that's everywhere, and photographs being, everywhere.
We're inundated.
Yeah. So the question is, what kind of story are you telling? What is actually being communicated? So this is just a kind of a reflection. So at that moment, when you made this photograph of this guy on the bicycle, and it could easily be this image, you're going to romanticize it of, say, the 1920s or 50s or whatever, but it's obviously today. It's obviously, it's this really high contrast, beautiful Kodachrome style color. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even the thing, like on the absolute edge of the photo is on the ground in Hong Kong, because the way the traffic works, they paint on the roads, look right or look left. And you could just see on the edge, it says okay, right. So it's supposed to be look right, but all you see is like kind of okay, right? Maybe that's even a subconscious thing that you didn't see.
I love that you see that. I'm so specific with my cropping. I had some very good teachers, and you know how you like when you're learning, you critique your work, and I'm like, what about that rock in the corner? They're like, God damn it, you ruined that photo for me. I'm like, it's very distracting. I don't like it. Yeah, I pride myself on my cropping. It's I like to say to people like, I love that detail. I'm like, it's not a mistake.
No, of course. No, of course not. No, but exactly.
Thank you.
Let's kind of pull the focus back even more. Okay. So where are you now in terms of your look ahead into the future, your look as a photographer, so you're doing a lot of work specifically with feels like focusing and highlighting the female experience.
I think, present company included, photography is a very male-dominated industry. Mm. And you seem absolutely delightful, but a lot of women, they all have their like creepy male photographer story,
That's the most beautiful insult I've ever heard.
I know. I've been thinking about this all week and going like, I have to say it, but it's close. The male gaze in photography is definitely a factor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The person who I'm publishing just before you is, I'm going to butcher her name, Andrea Björsel. She's from Sweden. And her photography is, she's a photographer, and she has the exquisite compositions that you have totally different aesthetic, totally different look.
Yeah.
Totally,
and that's what I love about photography, right?
Absolutely. So it's really interesting and fascinating that came up. I don't know if it came up in the podcast, but in a separate conversation about, I understand, like my work was in Human Rights Commission, and like I've done a bit of photography professionally, and I know that especially in fashion.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit! It's just like what a cesspool in many ways.
Yeah, it's absolutely
so.
Awful.
Why don't you speak to that in terms of present company exclude? Imagine I'm on the room.
Oh my God!
Unload.
No,
it's fine.
I think what I see a lot, and when I was a kid, you just didn't want to have your photo taken. And, like you sort of like early, late teens, early 20s, and, you meet a guy and he's like, oh, well, I'm a photographer. Why don't you come over to the studio? And I'm like, and this is before Me Too. This is like the early 2000s, which was such a filthy, hypersexualized, especially for young women, decade. I think it was coming off the back of grunge, and it sort of went to all this, like, the Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears aesthetic. And it was these young girls. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, it's nothing like now with the sort of the Instagram juggernaut of women sort of owning their own bodies and owning their own images. But it was men taking photographs of these girls, of these women. Mm-hmm. And the women that I work with now still say like, yeah, I had some really nice headshots done a few years ago, but the dude just creeped me out. Right. And I'm all for body positivity and loving the skin you're in. Like, everybody's got stuff that they're just like, fuck, I do not want to see this on celluloid. Sure. I don't want to have this like on my LinkedIn. So I guess my point of differentiation is understanding, the pain points, if you will, of what women like to highlight, are less happy about highlighting, and also just helping them pose and just feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And, portrait photography is very intimate.
Right.
Like you have to physically touch people. And it's like, you might adjust like, a lock of hair or a bra strap. And you've like I've got hands on people, which during COVID is a completely different beast again.
Sure.
But yeah, I sort of wanted to take away that anxiety and come from a place of kindness and compassion to deliver photos that they're like, I'm, looking pretty hot today, and just be really proud of it, and then walk away with their their head held a bit higher, a bit of a spring in their step, and just to show them that they're beautiful, and everybody's beautiful. You just need to sort of know how that relates to a two-dimensional machine.
Right. Yeah.
Do you want me to elaborate on that?
No. I mean, don't let me stop you. Just processing.
Okay, it's a lot.
No.
We're covering ground today.
No, that's good. Listen, we're going wherever the conversation takes us. Like the person who trips the shutter today, when you're there and you're tripping the shutter today, the images that I see in your studio, at least, are of children, not necessarily of adults. So I don't see how that translates to your work with.
They're coming.
Okay, no, it's great. It's great.
So this blank wall behind you, that's going to be my gallery wall.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah.
How long have you been here?
I only got the keys on the 31st of December.
Whoa, nice.
Yeah.
Welcome.
It's very new.
It feels really great.
Yeah, it's very new. So keys on the 31st, open to the public on the 20th.
In what capacity?
As in doing shoots here.
Okay.
Yeah, this was just a storage unit. Yeah, so had to get lighting redone, electrics painted, get the cupboards installed, all of that.
Wicked.
Yeah, it was great. It's just nice to have a space to create in.
Yes. Are you opening this up to other people to use with you?
Yeah, great question. I was with two really awesome chicks last year. They're both in my 20 Women series. One is Ria Chandaramani. She's an artist. She's an incredible painter. And the other is Belinda Esterhammer, who has a podcast, and she's very involved in women in tech and entrepreneurship. She's just an amazing girl. And just so young. You just meet people under 30, you're like, God damn it. I'm not even sure I still know if I've what I'm doing with my final.
I look older than I am. I'm 24. I don't know what you're talking about.
You got some miles of hard road around.
Thanks.
But we were at Soho House, and Belinda's talking about working from home, and I had Alex. So I was working from home, and Ria is I think her husband was doing weird shifts. Sorry, her boyfriend was doing weird shifts, so he was working from home. It's we need to have somewhere where it's affordable enough to go there and hang out, and but also private enough so that you can get your head in the game and get in flow and do something. And I'm like, why don't we just start a little women's space where you can record a podcast, you can do painting, I can do a photo shoot, and we can all just hang out. Wow. And they're like, oh, Jules, it won't work. They've tried it before. It costs a fortune to set up. And I'm like, it's a white box. I don't think so. So 2020 did its voodoo towards the end of last year, and I found myself, on this precipice of, do I stay in Hong Kong or do I go home? And if I go home, what does that look like? And I was speaking to some really amazing friends, and they're like, Jules, you've got a business. You've got income. This is your home. Do you want to try? And I'm like, yeah, I'll try. So, and then the dominoes just fell. So I found this place. It was a break lease. I got some really great opportunities coming up. I found a little apartment, and it just it clicked.
It's great.
But yeah, we're going to be holding talks here. I want to do some movie nights. We had Habitat for Humanity do a live stream fundraiser in here a few weeks ago. Wicked. So we proved it can happen. Yes. And just, it's not one of those big, mega co-working spaces, which are more geared towards people who have, a laptop and a headset.
Sure.
You can, I want to get people to come do live painting, and we'll just spread out a massive canvas on the floor.
Right. It's flows of energy, think when it's raining, right? Eventually the water I didn't come up with this idea, but eventually the water finds its own little rivulets, and then those rivulets find into other channels, and then larger streams, all this stuff, and they kind of find their own flow. And so in the same way, people who bring their energy, and the space and environment is going to evolve into whatever it needs to evolve into.
That's a really beautiful analogy.
It's not mine. It's plagiarized.
Hey,
yeah,
it's the highest form of flattery.
Listen, Julia, this has been really great. I love talking shop, and you delivered 100%.
Thank you. I was nervous.
You were nervous.
Yes.
It's like going to the dentist. You have great teeth. Don't worry about it. Any last things you want to give to somebody listening to this in terms of, there's a 16, 20, 24-year-old beginning budding photographer, the 20-year-old you. What would you say?
Oh my God, I love this question so much. I think like many creative careers, people like look at people who are actually doing it and they're like, but how did you get there? Like, I just don't know how to do it. And it's like, for me, it was, packing up your ego and putting it in a bag and going to a class and going, I want to do something, but I don't know how yet.
Mm.
Go to classes, go do online courses, ask a friend, go on walks with a camera, or, if you want to be a dancer, look at YouTube videos, or, ask people. Generally, I think in creative industries and in the arts, people are very helpful.
Mm.
And if you ask somebody, like, could you teach me some things, or could I watch you work? Like, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, they're like, God, I would love that.
Do you have any apprentices?
I've got an intern who's amazing, who's doing some work for me at the moment. I would absolutely love to. It's one of those things that you sort of have to have the time to think about and put in place properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a one-woman band at this stage. But, yeah, I would absolutely love to have some proteges.
Julia, thank you so much. This has been great. We've been speaking for an hour. Thank you for your time. Are we going to do the cat's pee?
Cancer bit.
Well, do you want to?
I don't know.
My original impulse was, when I was going to see you, the first thing I was going to say was, do you need a hug?
Oh, man.
Do you know what I mean? Like, in Hong Kong, people don't touch each other. Do you want a hug?
Yeah, man, I do actually. Like, I lost it at hours.
I know. You need a hug. Come on.
Oh, Jesus Christ, can you believe it? I don't know. So, I guess what I'm trying to do at the moment is get as much work as I can.
Mm.
And what I'm nervous about is people thinking, holy fuck, she's going to drop dead and never give me my images.
These are real fears. I mean, but
what does your gut tell you?
My gut?
Yeah. About telling the story in this forum.
Well, the whole point of the podcast is raw. It's genuine. It's just, in a way, you're. This is what's, I think, shocking, is that you have your life, right? And then one day, boom, you get this news that completely, well, it's kind of like with the pandemic, where all of a sudden you're just like, wait, no, the world's supposed to look like something, and now it's really looking like something.
This is really inconvenient.
But it's also like, how do I process this?
Yeah.
And so you'll go through the whole slew of emotions, like, denial and anger, and having been in a few near-death experiences. This is kind of what prompted the podcast, and this impulse, which is every second is a gift.
Totally.
And now what, after you get that phone call and your brain's like, what the fuck? And then, you look at Alex, you're looking at her with completely different eyes.
Yeah.
So I feel that with you, as a human, as a primate, as a human animal, you're going to lean towards the more negative side, because as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
So just be aware that while you're telling yourself that story of negativity, that's the bias that is not necessarily the outcome. So luckily, it's early stage. Luckily, it's...
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your process?
So for background, after, weird, I always joke, like, never had chicken pox, never had measles, never broken a bone, had dysentery, had like a 10 centimeter ovarian cyst. Like, I just get weird stuff.
Yeah.
But, after after a really big turbulent few months, and just going, because I do support women, and I think the world would be a much better place if women actually helped each other instead of trying to drag each other down. I wanted to tell this story and just to listen to ourselves and listen to our bodies. So after a few months of just feeling off, and I'm like, something is not right, I got a pap smear and I got a follow-up, which is a procedure called a colposcopy, which is the process of taking pieces of tissue, biopsies, from the cervix and through the cervix into the neck of the womb, which is as pleasant as you think it sounds. And, you know, people are like, oh, Jules, I'm sure it's fine. It's going to be fine. I'm like, I don't think it is going to be fine. Well, eventually it will be fine, but right now I don't think it's fine. Yeah. And unfortunately my intuition was right. So this past Monday, so it's 5 days ago, I'm not sure when you're going to air with this. Yeah. I had a appointment at 8 a.m. on the 8th of March, also International Women's Day. Met with the doctor who I probably traumatised during the colposcopy a few weeks back. And he said, like, you know, it's not good news. Like, well, I wasn't expecting an 8 a.m. doctor's appointment to be good news. And he said, yeah, I'm sorry to say that the diagnosis is cervical cancer. And you just have that, you know, in like movies or books, it's like your life flashes before your eyes. Mm-hmm. I didn't get that. I just got this wave of like, fuck. And once again, like, I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't know it was going to be the big C bad. Mm. So, of course, immediately I'm on the phone to my mum and dad. I'm an only child. And, you know, they knew I was nervous.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad was like going like, but you're going to be fine. Like, you know, when like parents do that thing with their children, like, but you will be fine. Yeah. I'm like, I may not be fine. Mm. And it's like, holy shit. So, like, I'm getting on a plane. I said, you can't. And they said, why not? And I said, because there's a pandemic. Huh. And yeah, so I was in hospital for like 8 hours on Monday, and it's just like meeting with people, tests, you know, talking through what it looks like, what happens from here. So the diagnosis is stage 1, a 2 centimetre tumour on the cervix. The treatment will be radical hysterectomy. And you know how you have like intrusive thoughts? And I keep thinking of like this like, you know, 80s like surfer dude going like totally radical. Mm. And that's huge news. And you know, I'm not super young, but I'm certainly not menopausal either. Right. So I think that's a lot to sort of take on. And with all of my work with like, you know, empowering women and doing that, it was just like, what makes you a woman? Like, is it how you identify? Is it your ability to create life? Is it your uterus? So I think that's a journey I'm starting. This is all pretty new. So right now it's like I'm in the get shit done stage. Right. So I'm like, we need to book shoots, we need to work, we need to tell who we need to tell, we need to figure out financing because I'm going to be laid up for at least a month. What does that look like for my pipeline? How will my daughter take it? So I think over the next few weeks, I think I'll try and take some stock and I was encouraged to write about my experience because there is so much secrecy and shame around women's health. You know, women don't talk about hysterectomies. Breast cancer has only become a sort of hot button issue, in the last, 15, 20 years? There was always that, like, you need to keep it private, you need to keep it amongst the family.
So for the people who know me, they know that I'm very TMI about absolutely everything.
Me too. We're going to get on great.
Yeah. So the whole thing about shame and not talking, and clearly that's not me.
No, clearly not.
Kind of describe yourself a little bit as a type A-ish.
Type A enthusiast. Yeah.
You know. So I think one part of it is to try to wrap your head around things, right? Yeah. In your work, of all the things that you can be uptight about, one thing that you admit to and that you've selected to admit to is that cropping. That's selecting. You know, like it's not a mistake that it says okay, right? And it's almost like let's make a connection on what's on the street. What it says on the street is look right. What it says in the image is okay, right? And it's not a question. It's like a statement, you know. And the kind of photography you do and you prefer to do is in the studio where you're in control of the lighting, you're in control of the background. You're not fussing around with people's houses and all these little extraneous elements. You're in control of this environment so that you're communicating the vision or whatever you have in your head. So it's clear and clean. And one way of processing being told that you have cancer is, okay, I need to put a schedule and timeline on this. I need to make sure the pipeline is there. And luckily, thankfully, you can live on the assumption that that the prognosis is okay. It's going to suck because it's going to feel terrible. But looking at it after the fact, you may look back, you know, because for example, I was in a coma and I was paralyzed and, you know, all this stuff. But what really kind of has stayed with me is being thankful for, and luckily I survived. You know.
Totally. Gratitude, and because we have access to so much, and there is, you know, affluenza, and it's like, well, I've got a nice house, but it's not the best house.
Right.
Or it's like, well, you know, I've got a good job. It's not a great job.
Right.
And I think for me, I'm like, you are missing it. You are missing how special today is. Because we don't know what we've got left.
Absolutely.
We don't, there isn't, I mean, we've all got a countdown clock. We just don't know when it runs out.
Yeah.
And something that I worked on through, you know, Janine, and then like subsequently speaking to a therapist, you know, I think lots of artists do have a melancholia, is just, you know, appreciate what you've got, because we don't all get it.
Right. What strikes me about your energy and your attention and your time is to be careful of what you're looking at as an observer and sharing with others, but being really attentive to that moment in time. So in this image of the guy on the bike in cervical, let's just say what the shutter speed was. It's like 1/250th of a second or whatever. It's like a lifetime, a full lifetime is in that moment. And then, in a way, each time you wake up in the morning, that's like a gift. Right?
Completely. And I'd been working on that anyway, because it's just, you know, I think you said in the email, it's like, I love waking up on a Monday and you don't know what today's going to bring.
Fuck.
But you do.
So I send you this message on the Monday.
In hindsight, the timing was actually fucking terrible.
Shit. I said, I'm just like, why? Can you email me back, please? And you're just like,
no. In hindsight, that's actually really funny.
I'm really
No, it's fine. It's so fine. But you know, we've all got friends who just, you know, didn't make it, or, you know, had their life cut short, or something like awful happens. Like you in your coma. Like, you don't schedule that.
No,
you don't go like, so I think in about 6 weeks it should be a really good time to have a massive family emergency, right?
Exactly.
You don't have control over this.
Yeah.
Which is why you need to do it now. And that's how I treat my photography, my clients as well. I'm like, if you are well now and you have the means and you want to tell a story, just do it now.
Do it. How do you feel about this idea of embracing experience as a means to understand? So
100%.
You had to live with this idea now for about 5 days.
Yeah.
What can you say about embracing that?
When I found out, and it's a lot to absorb. So what I realized, you know, after working with a career coach, like I realized, like, I love taking photos and I love telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Jules is all about, right?
Right.
So I knew that we were due to chat, and I was speaking to a friend who's like he's a brands marketing guy, and he's like, look, I've seen your work and I know you and I know what you do. Like, you could tell this story. And he said that fits in with, you know, you wanting to help women and, you know, empower women and all that sort of stuff. And he said, like, if you feel comfortable sharing it, do it. And I'm like, dude, I love talking about myself. This is awesome. So in a way, this is a huge, it's an opportunity. Like my mum has a saying, like it's an ill wind that doesn't blow any good. Would prefer it wasn't. I'm sure there are other ways of, going through personal growth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but there's like an ownership to saying, okay, having a hysterectomy it's like there's this person, you,
yes,
and vessel of the body.
It's like this big. It's tiny.
So
much fuss over such a tiny thing.
Right. If I chopped off your arm, is that
would I be less Julia?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You are. I'd actually find it so inspiring that you would figure out a way of however you internalize and however you communicate that and let that come through.
I think when I found out, it's like I want to be with people and, if people help people, the world will be a better place, right?
Yeah.
So I do wear my heart on my sleeve and I am an empath and I just like to share.
Sure.
I didn't expect to be telling my story quite like this, but here we are.
You can always say, let's not keep this.
No, I think I'm okay. I just didn't, obviously you're going to sort of slice and dice this and put it into something that is not a rambling.
As little as possible.
Really?
Yeah, as little as possible.
Tuning it raw?
Yes.